Alrighty, let's go ahead and talk about graphing linear equations. Linear inequalities simply means it's a less than symbol, greater than symbol. We're going to learn about sketching them and graphing them. You will have that for homework. Again, make sure you send it through PDF. You can do that with iPhone through Notes. If you take a picture, it scans a document. When it scans it, it makes it more clearer. Or you can do that app that I'll have on the homework section, Office Lens, that also sends it out really good so I can see. Because if I can't read it, if you take a picture, send it to your email, and if I can't read it because it's blurry, because it's not PDF, then it will just be wrong and it'll be a 0. If you need any help with that, let me know. I can show you different apps, different sources and how to, but you have to let me know. You can't just ignore it altogether. Example 1. We have a solution with this inequality here. They said to see if the inequality works or the solution works to that. What we do is we have a coordinate, meaning x comma y. We go ahead and plug it in with our x comma and y here. So y, according to this, is 4. We keep the symbol the same. 4 is greater than 5 times x, or 5 times 0 minus 1. We go ahead and solve. So 5 times 0 is 0 minus 1. According to this, 4 is greater than 0. Remember, that's the greater than. If it's slanted L, that's less than. If it's facing the opposite direction, it's greater than. So here it says 4 is greater than negative 1. That means 0, 4 is a solution to this set here. So this works out. Let's do B. This is x, this is y. Y, according to this, is negative 3. Keep the symbols the same. Negative 3 times x, x is now 3 plus 6. We have here negative 3 is less than negative 9 plus 6. We have negative 3 is less than negative 3. According to this, negative 3 is less than negative 3. That is not a solution. A number that's less than negative 3 is negative 2, negative 1. If it had the line underneath, it would be right, but it doesn't. So it's looking for numbers less than negative 3. In this case, negative 3 is not less than negative 3. So this first one is not a solution. Last one here, negative 4, 8, so x and y. Here it only says y is less than or equal to 9. Y is considered 8. Is 8 less than or equal to 9? It's less than, so that means this solution works. So that means this is a solution. Now, this is just, coordinates according to this graph here. Now looking over here, if we have less than or greater than, there's no line underneath, you're going to create dotted lines. So instead of creating a solid line like we did before for graphing, we're creating a dotted line. And if we have the lines underneath, we create a solid line, and I'll show you what that means. For inequalities, remember inequalities mean there's a range of different answers. X cannot just be one answer, it's a range. So here we have greater than. If it's greater than, you shade above the line. If it's less than, you shade below the line. So now let's go ahead and start graphing. Graphing, there's 2 different ways you can graph. The first way is my favorite kind of way, which is just looking at it. I'm going to put method number 1. Is looking at the y-intercept, which is B. So y-intercept, and then you graph by your slope. So let's go ahead and create this line here. We have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, positive 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to put the numbers in because for the sake of time. I will need numbers in your homework, so make sure you put the numbers there. Here, for method number 1, all you do is you graph by your y-intercept. B, remember everything is in y equals mx plus b format, meaning that's an equation of a line. So here, instead of looking at it as y is greater than or equal to, look at it as y is equal to negative 3/4 x minus 3. Just picture it as a line. You will have to focus on this in the very end though. So now, B is the y-intercept. B is considered negative 3. That's your first dot. So your first dot here is negative 3. Your second point is your slope. According to that, your slope is negative 3/4. If it's a negative slope, that means your line is facing downward and your man, he's running downward, he's running down the hill. Here, negative 3/4, so you can go up or down 3 and then 4 left or right, and this all determines how the line's going to look. So I go up 3, because I'm just trying to keep within the origin, 2, 3, and I have a choice, 4 to the left or 4 to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can either choose this one here or 1, 2, 3, 4. I can choose this one. So what I would do, you go up or down 3, and then just when you're moving 4, you have to move left or right. And then for this one, to determine it, just simply kind of graph a line in your head. If I were to draw a line this way, will my line be facing downward, upward? In this case, it'll be facing downward. So that means this works out. If I look over here, if I were to draw a line this way, it looks like if I drew a man, he'll be running upward, and that graph will be wrong. So look at how the graph is. It's negative. We did graphs like this before, so let's review. So go back and look for the lesson if you are struggling with it, if you don't remember. But in this case here, it's a negative slope, so the line is facing downward. Now we have to focus on our sign. Is greater than or equal to. So remember, if there's a line underneath, it's a solid line. So that's what they mean by solid. If it's dotted, then you'll make your little solid or dotted lines there. And now we have to shade. So not only do we graph, we shade. According to this, it's greater than. So when you're trying to shade, you shade above the line because it's greater than. And that's one way. The second way you can create is x and y table. So you have y is equal to negative 3/4 x minus 3. You can do negative 1, 0, and 1. And then plot your points from there. That works the same way. So if I did that here and I got 2.25, I got negative 3 for 0. I got negative 3 and 3.75. So if you were to plug this in here, I just put a decimal form so it's easier for me to graph. But you go ahead and plug it in this equation for x, and you solve for y, and you have these 3 coordinates, and that will help you create your line as well. But I prefer this method here. Now, let's look at b. So x is less than 4. Whenever you have an equation, x equals a number or y equals a number, they create 2 different types of graphs. X creates a vertical graph, that means up and down. It's a line that goes up and down. That means it's a line that crosses the x-axis. Y is horizontal. You're going to create a line that crosses the y-axis, so it's going to be a horizontal line. Like the horizon, it's a horizontal line. So now here, x is less. That means x is a number less than 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is negative 4. So it's an x, so that means it's going to create a vertical line. There's no x and y in this equation. So that means we have to draw a line at 4. There's no line underneath, meaning it's going to be dotted. It's a horizontal, meaning it's going to cut at the x-axis at 4. Now here says x is less than 4. So what numbers are less than 4? 3, 2, 1. And if we're focusing on the x-axis, 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, that's all going to be this section over here. And that's how you'll sketch your graph from this one. The next one is just understanding to get the y by itself. We don't have the y by itself over here. So now we have to go ahead and solve for y before we graph. So here, to get y by itself, I'm going to move 16x to the other side. So now I have 4y is greater than, or is less than or equal to, negative 16x plus 8. Again, this is from the same side, so I'm just switching the two. I'm not changing a sign. I did change the sign for negative 16 because I'm crossing the inequality symbol, meaning it changes the sign. Now, you go ahead and divide by 4. Remember, you're dividing by 4 for every factor here. I have y is less than or equal to, negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4x, and then 8 divided by 4 is 2. So now I have an equation. Y is less than or equal to negative 4x plus 2. Think of a line, y equals negative 4x plus 2. According to this, my y-intercept first, my slope second. My y-intercept is 2, so that's my first dot. So it's a 2. You're only going to draw a line at the y-axis. Now the next one is negative 4 over 1. That's what that means. Remember, the line is now facing downward. So I'm going to draw these lines here. So now this is negative 4, 1. Remember, you go up or down, then you go left or right. Rise over run. So I'm going to go down 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have a choice between 1 to the left or 1 to the right. It's a negative slope, so I want my line facing downward. So if I want it to face downward, it's going to be this one here. So I'm not going to use the left one. I do 2 points so I can see which one really works out for me. And it looks like the right one worked out, so I erased the left one there. Now I look at the symbol here. There's a line underneath, meaning it's a solid line. So I have my solid line here. Now the symbol is less than, so if it's less than, I have to see if I shade above or below. Less than, you shade below the line. So here's a line, you're shading under the line. And then you have that. Next one, 3x minus y is less than negative 4. Get the y by itself. Subtract both sides by negative 3x. So I have negative y. If you noticed, I'm going to leave it here. No, not yet. So I'm going to have negative y is less than negative 3x minus 4. Again, I'm subtracting 3x on this side, so I'm just switching them here so I can have the x first, so I can make it look like this formula here. Now, the negative y is less than 3x minus 4. The y is not by itself. There's a negative number there. I'm going to divide each number by negative 1 to get the y by itself. When you divide or multiply by a number that is a negative, remember that it changes your sign. So now my sign is going to be facing that way. And now for this becomes a positive 3x and a positive 4. So y is greater than. So that's why we go step by step into solving and getting the y by itself. Now we graph. So when we graph, we're focusing on this equation, not this equation from what we started from. So plus 4, you start with your y-intercept first. So plus 4 is over here. And then my slope is equal to 3 over 1. It's positive, so meaning my line is going to be facing upward. So I'm going to go ahead and go down 3. 1, 2, 3. Put 1 here, 1 here. My slope is positive, so I want my line to face upward. And the only option that I would choose to face upward is that right there, is the left one. If I chose the right one, my line would be facing downward, it would be wrong. So it's a positive slope. Now here, if you look at this, there's no line underneath, so it's dotted. So for my dry erase board, it's gonna make lines here. You would just create spaces like that, so they're dotted lines. So I made my dotted lines here. It says y is greater than. So greater means you're shading above the line. So it would be this section right here. And that's your graph. Example 4, you have to write equations for them. So it's a little bit tricky, but it's just understanding what kind of graphs they are. 2 types of graphs. There is the y equals x, meaning it's tilted, or if it's a straight line. So it goes straight left and right, or straight up and down. Example 4, it goes straight left and right. If you remember, y creates horizontal lines. So this is a y graph. But it's not y equals something, because anytime you see anything shaded, that's considered an inequality. So I have y, and it looks like the line is cutting across at -1. So I have my y, it's a type of graph. I have my -1 because it's crossing at -1. Now I have to add an inequality symbol. If I look here, they're shading everything below -1. So if I follow my graph and I go where it's shaded, so it's -1, -2, -10, -100, -1000, that means the numbers are getting lower and lower, meaning it's going to be less than. And not only do I put less than, let me look at the line. Is it solid or dotted? In this case, it's solid. So that means y is less than or equal to -1. So that one's fairly easy. You just see where it crosses, see where the numbers are getting smaller or bigger. This case over here, this one gets a little bit tricky. This is an equation of a line, y equals mx plus b. When you're creating a line, remember it's sideways. It only occurs when you have an x and a y in the same equation. I always start with my b. My b is the easier point I can use because I know my b is right here, is where the line crosses the y-axis. It looks like the line crosses the y-axis and -4. So that means all I have to do is find my slope. 2 ways you can find your slope. If you notice at 4, when it goes from -4 and it jumps from this one here for the next line, it jumps 1 unit and 1 unit up, 1 unit to the right. Jumps 1 unit up, 1 unit to the right. So therefore, it's creating a slope of 1. Or you can simply use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is considered the slope formula. You're using this to find your slope. 2 points you can use is 0 and -4. This point right here. You can also use this point right here because it cuts across evenly at that line, and that would be 4, 0. So x1, y1, x2, y2. Go ahead and graph it. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, which is 0. There's a negative, negative, that means they turn into positives. I get 4 over 4, which also equals 1. So now my slope is 1. When I'm creating the line, I have y is equal to x minus 4. I can put 1x, but it's just x minus 4. Now, remember it's not an equation, it's an inequality. So if I look here, it looks like they're shading above the line. So whenever you're shading above the line, you're creating a greater than symbol. Also look at it to see if they're dotted or solid. In this case, it's dotted, so that means you're now putting a line underneath. This is the equation. The last one, we'll do this one pretty quickly. This is a word problem. They're saying try to find the equation of it. For the first one, they asked each game costs $2, each food costs $3. They want to use no more than $12 at most, meaning the most you can spend is $12, but you can spend anything less than 12, not anything greater than 12. So that would be the symbol less than or equal to $2 per game, which we don't know how many games they played, and then $3 per food. We don't know how much food they got, so we use the variables of x and y. And what we're trying to find is the equation for them all. So then I'm going to create an equation just like that. Because when you add it up, it should be equal to 12 or it should be less than 12. Now we have to make an equation or inequality and graph it. Get the y by itself. Subtract 2x to both sides. 3y is less than or equal to negative 2x plus 12. Now divide all your factors by 3. It's not changing signs because you're dividing by a positive number. So negative 2 divided by 3 is just negative 2/3 x. 12 divided by 3 is positive 4. And that will be your symbol. Last part, graph it. You graph the y-intercept first and then the slope second. Positive 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is that one right there. And then you have negative 2/3, meaning you're going up or down 2, left or right 3. It's negative, so your line is facing downward. So here, I'm going to have 1, 2, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Here they're saying you can't go past this because you can't have a negative 7 games. If this was the x-axis, if I have negative 10, you can't have negative 10 games because this is considered the number of games, which is true. You can't have negative 20 games that you played. So that's why they're trying to keep everything within this section of the first quadrant. So if I go down 2, I go 1, 2, 3 to the right, I have the 2 lines there. It's a solid line because the line is solid. There's a line underneath it. Less than or equal to, meaning I'm shading below. So if I'm focusing on the first quadrant, I'm focusing on a line that looks like that. For your homework, make sure you're graphing them. Make sure you put the numbers there. I didn't for the sake of time for this one, but I need numbers for your graph. Thank you. Goodbye.